Hey fam, welcome back into the Out of Our Minds podcast. This is Nikki here, and you are about to listen to episode 4. First of all, we just want to say thank you so much for all the love that we received for the first 3 episodes. We are so happy to hear that everything is landing with you guys and that you guys are resonating with the message that we're putting out. We received so many beautiful messages, so thank you guys for sharing all the love. Now, this next episode that you're about to listen to is a reaction to the Barbie movie. Bella and I are both going to share what it is we thought about the movie, and you are going to be pleasantly surprised with what it was we both found. Both of us came to this recording with completely different perspectives on this movie, and it just goes to show how our personal perception of the world changes your entire experience. 2 people can walk into the exact same movie and take away 2 completely different meanings. So as you listen to my reaction and Bella's reaction, know that nothing is absolute truth. We're just exploring what we perceived with our own 2 eyes as we were sitting in the theater and watching. And I do want to share that my reaction and the way I felt about this movie completely surprised me, because I am not a movie fanatic the way that Bella is. Bella was a film and TV major. She loves movies. She's obsessed with them. She goes to see all the new movies when they come out. I, on the other hand, carry pretty strong opinions about the whole Hollywood scene, and I don't really resonate with it, but that's a story for another day. I allowed myself to go into this movie with open mind and open heart, and I was shocked with the way that I felt about it. You're going to hear exactly what I picked up, and maybe you'll start to see what I saw and also see what Bella saw. And it's really interesting because Bella actually went back to the movies after we recorded this and was able to also pick up on some of the things that I found. But it's really, really cool to listen to this episode, enjoy it. We're going to talk all about feminist movement that was pushed in the movie. Is it something that we agree with? Is there another way that we can go about empowering women to really take control of their own life and really step into that role of a powerful feminine energy? And we're going to talk all about what we really felt about this movie. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. What's up, guys? I'm Nikki.
I'm Bella, and this is the Out of Our Minds podcast, a playground for mystics and self-explorers to journey through the vast realms of the universe, cultural landscapes, and spiritual expansion.
Join us weekly as we dive into thought-provoking discussions that unveil the mysteries of existence and nurture the growth of our consciousness.
So Barbie has been out for a week, and it has taken the world by storm.
Dude, the hype on this movie was real.
Dude, the marketing money that this movie had was unfucking believable. Like, I don't know if I've seen a movie have such, like, I was about to use the word pervasive, even though it's a little negative. It was like intense marketing, like a lot. Everywhere. People wearing were people wearing pink at your theater? Because everyone was wearing pink at my theater. I accidentally wore a pink shirt. Like, I didn't even mean to. And I wore like a fuchsia shirt.
It was so cute at the theater we went to give people some context. I'm in Arizona right now, and the theater was like one of those old school theaters that didn't have like the big comfy seats, and you couldn't order like real food. It was like classic movie theater. And the audience, I even said to Peter when we were ordering popcorn, I'm like, the average age in here is 80 years old. It was all old women in groups of like their girl gang wearing pink.
Really?
It was epic, yeah.
Aww, that's
it was
cute.
so cute. They all had like little pink heels on and big flowy pink dresses. It was adorable.
I love that. Wow. Okay. I want to start with, like, what was your initial raw reaction, like, during the movie and then right after?
Okay, so you had texted me right after you saw it and was like, I can't wait to do an episode on this, but I'm not going to tell you what I thought of it. And I was like, what the heck? I'm not going to wait all these days. Like, the suspense of you not telling me your reaction to it was killing me. So then you eventually told me your reaction that you thought it was, like, a little too woke and there was a big political, like, feminist movement that was pushed in it, right? Like, that was your few lines that you told me. So
right.
I went,
which I'll elaborate after you, but yeah.
Right. Sorry, I may be misinterpreting.
No,
But I went into the theater with the mindset of like, okay, this is going to be super woke. And I sat in the theater and I started watching it, and I could so pick up on those really pushy feminist storylines that you were kind of alluding to with what you shared with me. But as I started to watch it, Peter and I kept like nudging each other because we were like freaking out the whole time that there were so many spiritual undertones to it and spiritual messages. And the whole really pushy feminist stuff kind of just became almost satirical in a way. It was like almost too dramatic and drastic.
Yes.
But there was a huge spiritual undertone to the entire movie. And we walked out of the theater being like, holy crap. Like I immediately Googled on YouTube, actually, I typed in spiritual meaning behind Barbie. And I found this guy's video where he literally broke down all of the things that I was thinking the entire time. So my view on it is that Barbie went through an entire spiritual awakening journey where she didn't know who she was. She was questioning her identity. And then at the end, she meets the creator and she's like, how do I become someone that creates, not the idea? Like, how do I become the creator? And God, who is that old woman, is like telling her it's within you. You can be the creator. You just have to turn inwards and feel. And she like closes her eyes and feels all the emotions. And she realizes that she can be whoever she wants to be. And throughout the entire movie, there were just so many spiritual undertones of someone going on a spiritual awakening journey. There was the dark night of the soul where she was in her depressive state, where she was questioning everything. And there was a lot of storylines that had to do with ego deaths and really strong masculine identity. So Ken, throughout the whole movie, was going through these really deep awakening moments where he didn't know who he was because of how strongly he was identified with things. So in the beginning, he was like identified strongly as just Barbie's Ken, and that was like his identity. He didn't know who he was when she was gone.
And then beach.
And beach. Doing beach. But yeah, I'm kind of jumbling up everything that I was thinking because this is so hot for me because I literally just walked out of the theater 15 minutes ago. But his whole ego death that he went through was him literally out loud. He was saying, I am not beach. I am not this car. I am not. And that's literally a spiritual process, which is called, wait, I'm going to mess this up because I forgot it. Damn, I just Googled it on my phone, but there's a spiritual meaning, and I can't look at it because I'm recording, but there's a spiritual meaning to that whole process of someone saying, like, I am not my things, I am not this identity, and then all of a sudden they have a really massive ego death. Hey guys, this is Nikki here. I'm interrupting this podcast episode to inform you of what that expression that I was trying to think of during the podcast episode was, and I really want to share it because it's really freaking cool. So the scene where Ken is having that experience of saying, I am not this, I am not that, I am not this car, I am not beach. This is actually a very spiritual experience that he's going through that the Hindus coined as neti neti. Neti neti is a Sanskrit expression that literally means not this, not that, or neither this nor that. And it is a type of contemplation and meditation that the Hindus would use in order to contemplate what it is they truly are. So you kind of negate all of the things you are not in order to get to a deeper meaning of who it is you truly are, which is this formless being, right? Consciousness, the God within. That is truly who you are. You are the awareness of self. The Hindus call this Brahman. So they used nati nati as a type of meditation to help a person to understand the nature of the Brahman by negating everything that is not the Brahman. So this is such a cool moment to really reflect on how this was taken into the scene of Ken having an ego death, right? He was saying out loud, wait, I'm not my car. I'm not beach. And actually starting to realize that he is so much more than the things that he used to identify with. And I thought this scene was really cool and I wanted to make that connection here. So hope you guys enjoyed this little fun fact and we'll get back into the episode. So yeah, all in all, I thought it was a very spiritual movie and that there were so many hints to really get us to see that there is so much more to life than the things that we identify as, and there's so much power that comes from within. So yeah, I'm curious to hear like your thoughts on my thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, when you were explaining it in that way, it actually gave me full body chills because I was like, it's so true. What you said about her like literally meeting her creator and like going through the phases of questioning her life, thinking about death, like going to an alternate reality, realizing that her reality is not what she thinks it is, right? Like she goes through all of these steps that are inherently spiritual because they're about like who you are as a person, how you relate to the world that you're in, right? Like the illusion of your life. So yeah, like when I think back, I 100% see the spiritual message behind it. And it's like actually pretty cool because even at the end, it's not like she even chooses to stay in her like fake Barbie world. She chooses to go into the real world that like has all of its issues, right? Like that's confronting reality, which she does, which is a super like in Eastern philosophy, they talk about that, like not ignoring the darkness, not like, you know, neglecting your emotions, like don't just turn away from the things that you don't like. They're like, face it and like confront reality. That's how you actually become enlightened. You face it. You don't just like, you know, throw it under the rug. So yeah, that's like very big in the movie. And I think, honestly, I think now what I'm seeing what happened to me which is what I think happened to a lot of people that had my reaction was, so basically I'll tell my shortened version of my like initial reaction, what I felt during the movie. So I was trying, when I go to watch movies, I actually should preface this conversation by saying that I'm like very into movies. Like I've been watching movies since I was really little. I was a film major in college. Like I adore the movies. And I like, when I go, I try to not watch the trailer because I find that it gives a lot away. And I want to have like a very raw reaction. And I also am a person who will like watch videos on like the behind the scenes. I want to know about the script. I'm like analyzing the story. I'm analyzing the shots. Like I go in there and I really like look at a lot of aspects. So I'll oftentimes go to the movies 3 times for the same movie so I can pay attention to different things. So I'm coming into this also with like admittedly what some people would call like a highbrow opinion where I'm like trying to analyze like the art form of it. And I do that with all movies that I watch just because it's fun for me. And that's like how I've been like trained in movies. So I went into it and I was like, I don't want to know anyone's opinion. But the person I was going with happened to tell me that she saw online that people were like, it's super woke. So I was like, fuck, okay. Like maybe it is, maybe it's not. And I still gave the movie like the benefit of the doubt. I thought like, okay, maybe people misinterpreted. Maybe they just like only saw the surface level and didn't go deep. So I go into it and honestly, throughout the movie, it was so fun. Like I laughed a lot. The sets are great. Like it's so cute and fun and wholesome. Like it's great comedy. Like the set is stunning. Like I thought the whole thing was just a fun experience. Like I thought it was really cool. I had a good time. At the same time, I think what I would call woke and what I mean by this is, to me, when there is a heavy pushing of a certain type of ideology that is very explicitly stated in language. So it's not like, you know, in other movies, you might see things explained through images and scenes that don't have dialogue. Like you see, you know, a certain scene on the street, a mother and a child or a mom, like whatever, you just see it acted out through actions and not dialogue. And for my personal tastes, I prefer the version where you use less words. And I find when I'm like analyzing films that too much dialogue to me is like a bit annoying and feels lazy as a like film creator because you don't let the audience member come to the realization on their own. You're telling them exactly what you want them to think. So that's why my initial reaction was like, I felt, because there's so much heavy dialogue about the themes of modern feminism, which is like, you know, women can do this, they can do that, we can do anything, we're equal to men, like all these things that we obviously know and have heard, because they were so explicitly stated, it really threw me off and took me out of the movie, right? Instead of being like in the world of the film, in the Barbie universe, through like, obviously there's so much visual aspects to it. On top of that, the excessive, like, I'm calling it excessive because it felt that way to me. That's what threw me off. And so when it came to that scene at the end where they're like literally like waking up the other Barbies by saying like that whole spiel about like, we're expected to do this and we can't be angry and we should be grateful, like all those things. It was just like the epitome of where it became like a parody, I think is what you're saying, of like the very obvious points being like said to all of the women to wake them up. I think my own, like I came into it, I have this aversion to like virtue signaling and this excessive like lecture feel to certain movies where I was sort of distracted from the spiritual themes because I have this like deep rooted aversion to being on the nose meaning like it's so in your face and it's obvious. It's not like subliminal or like subtle messaging that you figure out on your own. It's like told to you, right? So yeah, I left the theater, and me and my friend that went, we were both just like, oh my God, like that was so woke. Like we were analyzing all the parts of it that were very focused on like just the tropes of modern feminism, which I should say, it's not like I even disagree with them. Like, it's interesting because I actually am aligned with a lot of these sentiments. Like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. Like, I think I've kind of thought about the ways that different movies go about like propping up women in a powerful way. And there's two types, right? Some of them do it in this Barbie way where it's very like on the nose. They talk about it in the dialogue. It's like meta. They're like talking about the fact that they're women, right? Versus you have movies where, perfect example is like I also watched Mission Impossible the same weekend. And obviously that's like a male lead. It's a lot of male characters, but they also have like female agents that are like super badass and like do all this fighting stuff, or they're like, whatever. It's not even they're doing all masculine stuff. They're just doing their thing, but they don't talk about the fact that they're women doing it, which is a thing that a lot of these feminist movies do. And that's what takes away from the point for me, because it makes it into like a parody. So overall, that part of it, I think, unfortunately, the first time I watched it just took over for me, because I have this like, this is just my opinion too, right? This is just like a personal taste thing. Like, again, it could be that this is a way that makes sense to do it. But for me, it's like a virtue signaling, agenda pushing vibe that it gives me. And I feel like it takes me out of the movie, which when you're watching a movie, it's like you're supposed to have suspended disbelief. Like you're supposed to believe that you're in the universe of the film so that you like hook in and it brings you on an emotional journey. Obviously, you know it's a movie, but that's like how it makes a big impact. So that's my initial reaction. Okay. Which has kind of evolved since then, but.
So the way that I felt with that feminist storyline is that it was just the surface level, and it was a part of like the campy vibe of it. Like it was so in your face that it actually wasn't even the storyline at all. It was so much deeper than what they were just portraying on the surface. And I could so see how picking up on that storyline and almost like having that sense of agitation throughout the movie because of that could be something that would be present. But if you kind of just see past that and really see, I keep saying the word undertones, because that's truly what it felt like for me watching it the whole time. Like I just kind of brushed off those really, and I think they actually did do, so if you are in this spiritual space, self-help world, you probably are someone that's very aware that the real feminist movement is actually very different than the pushed feminist movement that the liberals, I shouldn't say the liberals, that people liberal ideology. Yes, I don't want to put people in boxes, but people who tend to, and I don't sway towards left or right. I really try to see both sides and understand people's perspective. But people who tend to have the liberal perspective will see the feminist movement as women taking power over men, and women needing to step into this very masculine role, which isn't feminism at all. If you are aware of the energetics that go behind feminism, the feminist and the masculine, the feminine and masculine energy, it is a balance of a very cohesive, almost like the yin yang, where the masculine provides a very specific type of energy, which is structure, foundation, and the feminine is what brings in the flow, the energy, the emotion. And all of us should carry a deeper strength in one of those. It doesn't matter what you identify as, either a male or female. Everyone should have one that they sway into more. It just so happens that people that are women tend to have more of a feminine feel to them. And then they have, it's like, I think I heard once it's around like 66, 33%. So you would have that feminine energy where you're very in touch with your emotions, your imagination, your creativity. And then you bring in the masculine, which is the structure, the discipline, the foundation, the boundaries, to allow yourself to flow within that feminine. Now, you can also view that balance the same way in relationships, there should be a balance of masculine and feminine energy. There should be a balance of someone bringing in that type of creative, imaginative flow. And it doesn't mean that this can't sway back and forth. The men can also have moments where they are more in their feminine, and the female would come in and really provide that structure and that masculinity for them. But there's always a balance. It's not about one overtaking the other. There's a balance. And this goes into a macro level in society where we have now swayed so deep into the toxic masculinity, which is very ego driven, which is all about the identification as the masculine, and it suppresses the female energy to a point where that energy cannot actually flow to its greatest capacity. So I want to just point that out here, that when like we're both talking about this feminism movement that's being pushed on us, we are both very strong believers in that balance of the feminine and masculine. Right. But it's that push of what they want us to be, what I'm going to air quote they, whoever it is that is controlling this matrixy government,
the
all
ideology
that stuff.
That's like taken hold. Yeah.
It's actually causing more imbalance it's dividing us. Right. And it's causing females to actually hate men and put them in boxes of being bad and suppressing us. And then it puts us in our masculine, where we actually lose the power to be in touch with the female energetics and emotion and creativity, and it suppresses us. Am I going off on riffs that don't make sense?
No, I know exactly what you mean, because so I think this is like what the sort of push against the classic feminist ideology, right? Like, which again, these are just different ideas that have taken hold. And it's not that we should like completely disregard them, but the point is like there's a clear ideology associated with this idea of what you would call liberal ideology or woke ideology, right? Woke now has a very like negative connotation, but it gets the point across of what we're talking about. And yeah, it's like that is the sort of overcompensation of where women have felt that we've been in such a patriarchal, male-dominated society, which is true in a lot of ways, that they almost like wanted to overcompensate on the way other side to like fill roles that they saw men doing without realizing that we can be equal without doing the same things. Right. And in fact, maybe we don't want to do the same things. Maybe it's not actually good for us to do the same things, right? With again, acknowledging that there's so much nuance and complexity and difference between women themselves, but we can also understand there's a reason why, like, you know, women's groups exist, because we do share a common thread of some sort of uniqueness to being a woman, right? Same thing with men and why they need men's circles. And we're seeing like a resurgence in men's groups because they're realizing that because now so much of the mainstream themes feel very anti-men, maybe without meaning to be, but that's how a lot of young men feel, is that they're irrelevant, right? They're like the Kens at the beginning of the movie. They have no one cares about them. They're rejected by women, right? Like that's kind of the interesting thing that I picked up on, was that Barbie land is like the polar opposite of the patriarchy, which it's meant to be, right? It's run by Barbies. Kens have can you still hear me? Mm-hmm. Kens have like literally no authority, no status. Like Ken gets rejected by Barbie, and he's kind of like a bitch the whole time. At least that's how I interpret him. Like that's like a whole sort of other thing we could analyze, is Ken, the main Ken, played by Ryan, was like just, yeah, very materialistic, very like beta energy. Like, I don't know, just very, yeah, I don't know how to call it, but just I was thinking of him as like kind of a sad representation of men, right? In this like very far from being in their divine masculine. So my point being, yeah, I think the typical modern feminism that we think of feels a bit incongruent with the real essence of like what it means to be a woman, what it is to be in your feminine energy, right? No matter like how you feel, what your identity is, right? Like there's some core part of this here that I think we're trying to reclaim as women that allows us to have that strength of what is the feminine energy or what it is to be a nurturing, caring woman, but also obviously understand that like we have rage and anger sometimes. And if we want to have a fucking job, we're going to have a job, right? Like things are just obvious to me. So that's why I think the on the nose pushing of all the classic feminist ideas felt so annoying because I was like, I know, I get it. Like you're almost turning yourself into a parody by putting it all so blatantly out there.
Yeah. Did you pick up on, I'm not remembering Sasha's mom's name in the movie, the young girl.
Oh, the Gloria?
The
like
mom.
Played by America Ferrera?
I don't know the actress's name, but yeah, probably. The one who worked at like the headquarters. The whole movie was her also exposing her shadow. So she talks about how she's like, yeah, I am crazy and I'm, what else did she say? Silly or like goofy. I forget. She had all these shadow parts of herself. And Sasha is supposed to represent, this is like what I picked up on and also what, when I searched it, people on YouTube were also saying this. Sasha is her inner child. And you can even look at just their storylines and it's a movie of her healing her inner child and allowing her to embrace her shadow parts of herself, which I thought was really, really cool. But yeah, I mean, going back to like the feminine and masculine stuff, I almost felt like the movie knew that pushing to females taking over the world is not the way that things are going to become balanced. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I just had so many thoughts when I was watching it. And my overall takeaway was that it was very spiritual. And even in the YouTube video that I was watching after about this guy explaining the spiritual aspects of it, he was quoting like Eckhart Tolle quotes about how you have to like really come face to face with challenge in order to go through your awakening. And you'll notice in the movie, there's always a really deep, like dark chapter for either Ken or Barbie. And then it catapults into like this really high moment. Yeah. And even for Ken, you can look at his storyline as him identifying with like toxic masculinity and then going into his awakening of realizing like, wait, I am enough just because I am Ken. And then I also found it interesting that Alan represented like the repressed masculine. He was like the one that was just like blindly following the females the whole time, not even knowing what he was supporting. And he just had no power in him at all. He was just literally blindly following them around. And I found that character very interesting as well.
Yeah. Okay, so this makes me think that this is what I wonder, right? Because people have all these different reactions and there's all these different interpretations. And then I wonder what the intention of the filmmaker, actors, creators, writers was. And that I watched like an interview where Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie talk about like the feminist themes, and they address how like at the beginning of the movie and for most of it, men are like nothing. Like they they kind of flip it and they make it very Barbie female dominated. And so they address that, but they say that at the end it's supposed to be like equal, right? Like Barbie Land gets more equal, and then like Barbie ends up going into the real world. But so my like question is, I wonder if all of this, for example, you noticing that Alan is like the very like out of his power, like sort of like whipped bitch boy to like put it aggressively, that just like follows the women and just like doesn't have any opinions and agrees with them. That like if that is thought through as being representing something that we don't want, or is that potentially something that some women wants of men? That's like the deeper level that I've been asking myself. Is we can see all these spiritual themes, but because the general ideology of the movie was so loud, that I wonder if we're able to sort of see past it in a positive way, but that if some people watch it and take away from it the potentially like negative ideas about like wanting women to over dominate, to go into the masculine, or viewing men as trash or viewing men as insignificant, right? Like that's, I think, where I felt that a lot of people are going to watch it and take that away from it because it's so present in the movie.
I just thought that was such a comical aspect of it that it's not, I guess, yeah, like subconsciously speaking, you're saying like we could take away these narratives. But even if you look at the way that the movie started and like the actual storyline that was progressing with the challenge, and then at the end, the close, it really didn't have to do with feminism at all. It had to do with her finding herself. And the end of the movie kind of tied it up in like a really pretty bow when she's in that white room with the creator. It has nothing to do with her taking over the world or men taking over the world. It had to do with her finding herself.
Right.
And
in fact, she actually is opting to go into what she viewed as patriarchy. She's actually choosing to go into the world that she potentially didn't like and that was painted so negatively.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I read a review or like a tweet from a conservative woman who, I think it's not exactly this, but she was like, Barbie is actually a conservative movie because she was like she was interpreting certain actions as like family values of like the mom and the daughter, and like talking about, you know, being like mothers and whatever, and that in the end Barbie chooses to leave the like, you know, whatever you call it, matriarchy, opposite of patriarchy world, to go into the real world where like things are whatever, however they are. And so this woman thought it was like a parody of feminism. The thing is, I don't think that's true because I know that the writers and the like people who made it have said like is of course a feminist movie. Like they've said that blatantly and it's very clear. But yeah, you could interpret it as like, yes, she goes into the real world, like Barbie Land ends up being more equal. I forgot how it ended for Ken and in Barbie Land exactly.
So in Barbie Land, it ends the last scene of Ken. He's wearing a sweatshirt that says enough with a K in front of it. So it says Kenuff.
Yeah.
And he goes, you're supposed to assume that he's like almost like spiritually awakened now. He's like wearing a headband around his head. And there's this balance that exists in Barbie Land. And it kind of is insinuated by one of the females reaching out to one of the men, and they like seem to have a very loving relationship with each other. It's not the females hating on the men and treating them and talking down to them. There's almost like this balance. And you can even notice in the decorations in the house, the women, when they started to take the power back and have that new the new constitution or whatever it is that they passed, you could see in the house when it's in that last scene of them in that neighborhood, they didn't actually take away the men's decoration. They just balanced it out. They like kept some of the horse stuff. And But another scene that I thought was really interesting was when they go into the real world for the first time. And it's the rollerblading scene with Margot Robbie.
Right. On Venice, your neighborhood.
Yes. And Ryan Gosling, and they're sitting, and all of a sudden they like show up in Venice, literally right outside my house, and you can see her gain consciousness. Like she starts to become aware, and she starts to have feeling and emotion, and she's looking around. Actually, this is after they get dressed in like the cowboy outfits, and she's like sitting at that train station and the bus station, and there's that old woman there. She's looking around at all the people in her surroundings, and she's feeling the emotion that they're feeling. And she's starting to become awake to like the energy that is within her. And she even closes her eyes and like does like a little meditation.
Yes, to find where she like uses her like third eye intuition to find where the girl is.
Yes. And while all of this is happening, Ken's on like a whole freaking ego trip. Like literally
Right.
he goes on a full ego trip of
Right.
like finding
He's like, the world is made for me. Men can get any job. Like,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that scene was interesting too. But I think I'm mixing up two scenes. But there was the scene where they walk into the real world, they rollerblade into the real world, and she becomes self-aware. She's like, wait, I am aware that I am me. I forget her exact lines.
Yeah. She was like, I'm feeling conscious, but of myself.
Yes, like she gained self-awareness. So that's why I'm saying the whole journey is literally a spiritual path. Her going on her spiritual path. She's not awake, she's on autopilot, she's questioning herself. She then has a pivotal moment that pulls her into a challenge when her feet go flat, and this starts to wake her up, and the cellulite and all that stuff, it's starting to get her to question like who she truly is. She goes to seek and find answers, which is like insinuating what happens when we go through our first dark night of the soul. It's like you're in
She goes to like the weird Barbie who's like an outcast, but probably knows more than we do because she's an outcast.
She's supposed to be like the awakened one who's like been through so much.
Yeah. And like doesn't give a fuck. She's like just very strange and funny and like doesn't care.
Yeah. And also like, side note, this is all my own personal perception, and this is like a really honestly cool analysis too, to really see how every single person is viewing life and also movies through the lens at which they see the world.
Right. Yes. I mean, dude, literally just our two very different initial reactions. Like, to be totally honest with you, the spiritual themes were so like I think I was aware of them, but I did not at all focus on them because I was so sucked in to like the things that caught my attention in terms of how I, you know, have this viewpoint that has to do with my ideas and my values and the way that I view certain ideologies and virtue signaling, like these things that I pay attention to, and I'm actually interested in them. Like I find them fascinating to think about how people become entrenched in their ideas and how it makes it into the media, right? Like how you could view this movie as subtle propaganda if you're not aware of like how people push their ideas onto you. Like say you disagree with the ideas in Barbie, right? If you have a right to that, right? And you are a mom and you want to send your kid to go see it, like this is where media and movies can turn into propaganda. Like we've talked about this, where there are certain movies, arguably most of them, that are actually just propaganda machines to like indoctrinate us into thinking a certain way. And those ideas could seem rosy and positive on the surface, right? Like most of the things that they say in Barbie when they're like awakening the other Barbies, like it seems all good and jolly, right? But we should be able to question them, and we should be able to critically think about those ideas and not just take them as what they are. So that's kind of what's interesting, is like this was perfect evidence of how two people who, you know, we're like on the same wavelength, we have like a lot of similar interests, but we also see the world very differently and we have different interests. And like when I'm going to a movie, I'm picking up on one thing and you're picking up on the other, which is honestly such a beautiful reminder of why it's okay for us to disagree on these things. Like actually last night I was with some younger girls, and one of them I think asked me what I thought of Barbie. And I was like, honestly, I mostly hated it. Like my first reaction was that I was kind of annoyed with it. I thought it was like a little too on the nose and woke. Like it bothered me a lot. Like I was just like, that's my general overall opinion. And she was like really taken aback and like kind of, I think she felt a little personally offended by my perspective on it, because hers was very different. She loved it and she thought it was like, so, you know, it was like, that's how Barbie is. Like it's supposed to be, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, I think what's interesting is some people will take that and think that I'm like judging them based on their opinion of this movie. This is basically their perspective on life. And it's such proof of like, we can all be watching the same literal movie and have different colored glasses on, interpret it completely fucking differently. And number one, that's good. Like that's good. We want different perspectives. Number two, someone can disagree with that and it's okay. And in fact, we should listen to when other people don't have the same ideas. Like when you explained the whole spiritual awakening path in it, I was like, wow, that is actually so beautiful. I want to go watch it again and like try to pay attention to that, right? But I still have my piece of it where I'm like, that is true. And I also think it was annoyingly woke. Like it was hard for me to get over that, right? Like both can exist. So I think that's kind of just the beauty of like when you ask someone what they think about blank and it's different from you, that's your starting point. Like that's where you're like, this is interesting because I can figure out, you know, where there's holes in my viewpoint or where I can add bits of yours into my, you know, perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like, think about it from the spiritual perspective of us being all one consciousness experiencing itself in different forms. This is something that I forget where I heard this, but it's our consciousness wants to experience life through different lenses. Like if we're going back to this whole concept of oneness, and this is funny that this conversation is stemming from the Barbie movie, but let it be.
Maybe this thing is spiritual.
But if you think about it, differing views could be one of the most important meanings of life because we're all acting as mirrors and reflections for our own personal opinions. If we all agreed, we wouldn't actually grow and evolve the way that we do. We grow and evolve through disagreement and by seeing things from different perspectives because you get to actually see, oh, wait, I have this personal perspective on something based on it's shining light on a belief system that you have or a way of seeing that isn't actually ultimate truth. Like even my perspective of me saying this was the idea and this was the undertone, like that's just my perspective. It's not truth. It's just the way that my eyes saw the movie.
Right. Yeah. Because like people watch movies all the time and they interpret something and then you ask the filmmaker and they're like, I literally didn't mean to do that at all.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's, like the creator's intention is one thing and then it gets interpreted in a different way. Like that's the beautiful thing about art. And what I do think is cool and what I really appreciate Greta Gerwig for, the director of Barbie, and she also wrote it with her partner, was that I think she wanted to start a conversation about all of this stuff. And I really respect that. And I think probably I can imagine there is it's kind of powerful to write a script that you know is going to ruffle feathers because that's how you start a domino effect of conversation, of debate, and that there are going to be people who don't like it. And that's kind of, in a way, a powerful thing to do is to put your ideas out there, even if you know that people are going to disagree with them, because it gives people a chance to be triggered or to talk about it or to have a new perspective. Like that's kind of the beautiful thing about this movie is even though it's controversial and a lot of conservative people are like fucking pissed off and focusing only on the woke stuff, you know, again, it's like, that's fine. Like everyone's going to talk about it and have different opinions. And maybe we realize, you know, maybe the conservatives are right about it. Maybe they're wrong about it. Maybe no one understood it correctly, you know, like it's all an opportunity to reflect, which is, again, I've told you this, like why I love movies so much is because now as an adult, I watch them with this like lens where I know that there could be subliminal messaging. It could be some type of propaganda movie that's trying to get me to think a certain way for some sort of agenda. Because I see that, I can use it as this opportunity to see a different viewpoint, right? To like expose my consciousness to different lives, different ideas, different emotions, like all sort of different dramas that people go through. And movies is like an amazing way to do that.
Yeah. Yep. And also it's funny too, you point out like the left versus right perspective. When you have that lens on of always trying to defend one of the sides, you're going to see everything in life as a fight against left versus right.
Yeah.
So like someone who maybe leaned more on the left and would go see a movie that this would never happen, that was pushed to like a right narrative, which you will never see. Actually, wait, yes, the Freedom movie.
Oh, the Sound of Freedom?
Yeah, that wasn't covered in the media at all.
I want to see that. That looks really powerful.
Yeah, but maybe if we release the perspective of the left versus right and just saw it as, tried to remove that perspective and saw it as something different, what would then come to the surface? And when I was in my car right after I saw the movie, I was Googling. I was like, I need to figure out if I'm just crazy or if this is something that other people are seeing too. Because Peter and I were both on the exact same wavelength as we were watching it. He was like, oh my God, I have so many theories. And he like kept tapping me. He's like, that's the creator. That's like, he's going through like, I was like, oh my God, he's going through an ego death right now. Like, and when we got in the car, I Googled spiritual meanings of Barbie. And there was this article that I found where, I'll read it. It says, how do you say her last name? Gerwig?
Yeah.
Gerwig wrote a Barbie treatment with filmmaker and co-screenwriter Noah, whatever, her romantic partner. And for anyone who doesn't know what a treatment is, I didn't know what that was. I'm sure you do, obviously, because you majored in film. But a treatment is a document that presents the story idea of your film before writing the entire script. So according to Margot Robbie, an initial part of the treatment involved a poem that the actress/producer described as abstract. And when I say abstract, I mean it was super abstract. She said Gerwig wouldn't read the poem, but she compared it to the Apostles' Creed.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So like,
yeah, I think what's kind of cool about this is it's making me realize, like, you know, I think I will admit I used to have this belief or this theory that when people become more spiritually awakened, and I have this idea of what that means, right? Like, I don't know, just aware of who they are, aware of the illusion, aware of oneness, aware of the, you know, false perception of identity, all these ideas, that would mean that people fall away from their political ideas, which I do think is still partially true because it allows you to break from identity, right? Identifying as a conservative, a liberal, a this, a that, which is very powerful. But I also think that you can be spiritually awakened and aware of X, Y, and Z and still obviously hold. I mean, it's obvious when I say it out loud, but it's like sometimes I think when we go through a certain awakening, an experience where our whole perception changes, that we think when other people do the same thing, it will result in them having the same shift in ideas. But that even, you know, the Barbie's version of a spiritual awakening, she can come to these realizations about herself and still hold many of the beliefs that she has. And there's nothing wrong with that. So what I'm getting at is like, it's kind of giving me another layer of like empathy and respect for the spirit of all human beings, and that everyone, no matter your belief, no matter your ideology, your identity, your ideas, your opinions, no matter all of that, we all still go through an awakening journey of the ego death, of questioning our reality, of realizing certain things are an illusion. Like, that is so human, and it doesn't matter where you're from or who you are, which is kind of a beautiful thing to realize, that even the people you disagree with, even like the people that you think you have nothing in common with, those people still go through obviously not everyone goes through awakening in this lifetime, but they still have that spirit in them, that soul, that universal consciousness that will go through that. And like the Barbies and the toys went through it because they're, you know, they gain consciousness of their feelings, and that's what it is to be a human.
yes. And I kind of think everyone goes through awakenings in their own way in life. Awakening moments can be, and you never stop going through them. That's the thing. It's like, when did you awaken? You don't stop awakening. You continuously are learning about the truth of who you are. Even if you're not even aware that you're on a spiritual journey, I believe every single person is on a spiritual journey. Every single person is going through phases in life where they're detaching from things that they thought they were, whether it be getting fired from a job and having to go through the awakening of realizing that that job didn't define them, or being cheated on by a shitty boyfriend and going through the awakening of realizing that their worthiness doesn't depend on that external thing. Every single hardship we go through is a moment to awaken and to turn inwards and to get to know ourselves on a deeper level, even if you're not calling it the spiritual path. And I love your perspective too, that everyone's journey with that can look different. You don't land at the same understanding. Right.
Well, dude, just think about the fact that there's an ideology that we call woke, which literally is to mean being awake. But now we sort of have this different definition of what it means to be awake, awakened versus woke. But think about that term is based on the idea that you're suddenly seeing the truth. So people view their break in perception as awakening. And wokeism is literally called that because those, you know, people who believe in those ideas and identify with that set of ideas, or just those ideas themselves, the whole concept is that you've become awakened to reality. Like, it's literally called woke. Like, you woke up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's how everyone's, even their own personal definition of what it means to be awakened and aware is different. Like, groups of people think that they're super awake and aware, and then another group of another person will completely disagree with all of those ideas and think that those people are asleep because they believe in things that they don't believe in.
Right. It's all perception. It's all a game of perception. And no one's right,
Yeah.
no one's wrong. It's just everything. This is like pretty crazy if you think about it, but like everything is subjective. And
Yeah.
what even is truth, right? Like, I don't know. We could do a whole other podcast on that, but I guess we should stick to like the Barbie topic here. Did you have anything else top of mind that you wanted to touch on with this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go see it again because I want to like try to have a different lens on it this time and focus more on those other themes that you talked about. Part of me still has an agitation toward it because of like this sort of bigger picture idea about like the way that ideas get fused into media and art in a way that, on my personal artistic opinion, can be done differently. And this just comes to my own like taste, right? Like, for example, the same weekend I saw Oppenheimer, which I thought was amazing and so stunning and beautiful and deep. And that is a movie that, yes, there's like a lot of dialogue of what's happening, but Christopher Nolan also, and that's the director, he really does an amazing job of using sound and visuals to convey a message. And the like artsy fartsy person in me loves that and finds that when you let people come to their own conclusion, I think that's really powerful. And I think it's a little bit more like reverent or in reverence to people's like free thought and letting them come to a certain conclusion. Like in Oppenheimer, you're just taken on this whole fascinating journey of inside the mind of Oppenheimer and inside the times of what it was, but there's a lot less focus on like telling the theme explicitly through dialogue and a lot more illustration of the emotion and the feeling, and it literally brings you into the world of the film. Like, there's a scene in the movie where it was just insane because I remember being in the theater. It was an IMAX theater. It was a really big theater. And I remember being like, realizing that every single person in the theater was like all of a sudden in sync and so in the world of the movie that we all went through this like wild, like emotional roller coaster together. And even then, everyone's interpreting it differently. So that's just like another layer to it where I think about how media and movies are created, that there's different ways of sort of like, you know, knowing that you as a filmmaker and an actor and a creator or writer have your idea of what you want to put across, but you also let people come to the realization on their own. So that's just my only and final thought with Barbie, is just like, I'm having like a yes and perspective. Like, yes, I love those spiritual themes you explained. I see them very clearly now and I want to go witness those again. And I also thought it was very woke and a little bit annoying, but that doesn't discredit it, right? Like, there's complexity to every movie and I don't have to agree with all of it in order to be positively impacted.
Right. And what if there was opportunity to interpret it in your own way, the way that you're saying with all these other movies that go more into kind of like that different type of...
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, I was surprised that I liked it. I have very strong opinions on Hollywood and celebrities, and Just the way
Right.
that how you were sharing with like propaganda and all of that with the film industry, I have very strong opinions towards that. So I was very shocked that I had this perspective on it. I was
Yeah, me too. I was like worried. When I saw it, I was like, God fucking damn it. Nikki's going to go watch this movie and she's going to have another reason to hate the movies and like not. So I'm glad that you saw like through the surface level messaging and could like appreciate it on a deeper level. I do think you should go see Oppenheimer because it's like polar opposite. It's such a different cinema experience. It's like one of those things that like it really hits true to the emotional journey that you can go on with movies.
Yeah, maybe I'll see it this week. It's been raining here and it's like the perfect weather to go to the movie theater. And
Perfect.
yeah, I like really liked going to the movies during the day. That's another thing. I fall
Isn't it
asleep.
fun?
I fall asleep very easily when I'm watching a movie. Oh, by the way, I watched The Truman Show, but I fell asleep. But I totally picked up on the spiritual undertones of that movie.
Isn't that interesting?
Holy crap. Yeah, just like the whole journey of him awakening to like the Matrix.
Yes. Oh my God. You know what would be fun? And people listening, let us know if this. I feel like talking about like certain movies or shows or ideas and maybe like inviting people to also like watch them and then we like do a review on it. Like Arrival, I would love for you to end up finishing watching so we can talk about that fucking mind-blowing movie. And like Truman Show and all these movies that have like interesting messaging. Could be cool to like do more of these in the future.
Yeah. Because I think another thing that Hollywood does is they make jokes out of things that are actually real in order for us to overlook the truth under that storyline. So
yes,
I think
I see that all the time. Yeah.
a lot of movies have storylines of that God energy that we all have within us, like that creator energy. And I don't mean that in like an egotistical way. I mean, like we are so much more powerful than what we know and believe about ourselves. And I think a lot of movies shine light on that. And they make it so, is satirical the right word to put here?
Yeah.
That
I think so.
you just oversee it. It's almost like watching space movies and being like, oh, that's just like a storyline that I watch in the movies.
Right.
About,
they
or
like want you to think it's fake.
Aliens, I mean. Sorry, I meant like alien movies. Yeah, and they do that in a lot of cartoons too. Like a lot of cartoons are actually super spiritual. I can't remember the name of that one cartoon that is created by that guy that was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's the voice actor.
Oh, Duncan Trussell?
Yes. What's that show?
Midnight Gospel.
Yes.
Love that
So
show.
spiritual. So many spiritual storylines.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, that one's like very obvious. But then there's also very spiritual storylines in there's another cartoon that Peter watches. I can't remember the name of it. It's like super silly. There's like a scientist guy. And what?
It's not South Park, is
No,
it?
not South Park. Oh. Someone listening to this definitely knows exactly what I'm talking about. Futurama? Is that it?
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Every time he's watching that, I'm like, wait.
No, sorry, you glitched for a second, so I don't know if your computer's about to die.
I'm on 4%, but we'll close out the podcast here. Pretty much, we should definitely keep doing this, where we have like our own little recaps on specific things that we watch, movies, old movies, new movies. I like this. This is fun.
I'm glad I like changed my mind a little bit because definitely I'm definitely at that like yes and perspective, and this turned out to be a lot more like we saw like the good in the movie and I was prepared to just rip it to shreds and be like, that fucking sucked. I hated it. It's not true. It was fun. Like I appreciated it. I just also had some strong agitation toward it.
Right. I could totally understand that. But okay, I guess we'll close out this podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our recap on Barbie.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts. I want to know other people's opinions and like what the nuance, everything in between. Let us know. Send us messages.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, we will see you next Wednesday.